What's up, football fans? What's up, Raider fans? I'm Sam Gordon here, Las Vegas Review Journal, here with this week's Vegas Nation Fan Zone. We are here at the midway point of the NFL season. A lot to talk about. We have a handful of questions, but before we get to those, just kind of going to give you my take on the Raiders' season thus far. 5-3 with a gauntlet of a schedule that they've had to navigate, including challenging road games against the New England Patriots. You go already to Kansas City, play the New Orleans Saints, play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. A lot of high-end talent, high-end quarterbacks that the Raiders have played so far this year, all while kind of navigating the uncertainty of the virus and their issues that they've had with the virus, along with a bunch of injuries as well, especially on the offensive line, kind of a revolving door there. With that, I think 5-3 is an excellent start to the season. I think the Raiders are in position to push for a playoff berth. With no doubt about that. They are in that mix there, with that wild card mix, along with the Indianapolis Colts, teams like the Miami Dolphins, the Cleveland Browns, et cetera, et cetera. I expect them to continue to make a push for the playoffs. The schedule, as we know, it softens up a little bit with the Broncos on the horizon, games against the Jets, the Atlanta Falcons. You get the Chargers again at home. A lot of winnable games on the schedule, especially if the Raiders continue to play like one of the best offensive teams in the league, which is what they've been over the course of the first 8 weeks, and then if the defense continues to improve incrementally like it has the last couple games, making plays. Derek Carr has to get his roses, no doubt about that. Career high in passer rating, second highest mark of his career completion percentage. He's throwing the ball down the field more, 16-2 touchdown interception ratio. He's been fantastic. And again, that offensive line has been good, keeping him clean, allowing the 8th fewest pressures so far in the NFL this season. That all in spite of missing Trent Brown for most of the year, Richie Incognito for most of the year. Colt Miller goes out last week. So a really impressive start, I think, with the Raiders in their inaugural season in Las Vegas, no doubt about that. And then on top of that, 5 of the last 8 games of the season are at home. So you've already done most of your work on the road. You only go outdoors twice more this year when they do travel on the road, with games against the Jets and Denver. They already battled the elements in a way that I don't think they're probably going to see again at all. With that game, the grapple in Cleveland, and you come out of there victorious. So they know that they can win in the elements. They can win in challenging situations when the weather might compromise some of what they want to do. So I've been really impressed. And, again, the coaching staff, I think, has done a really good job. John Gruden kind of navigating the challenges that he's faced this year with those injuries and whatnot. Tom Cable on the offensive line, everything they've done, having to move guys around different positions. They specifically, they mentioned it quite a bit that all 5 linemen are coached to play different positions across the offensive line. So there's a lot of versatility there, a lot of experience, and a lot of, frankly, good play during arduous circumstances when you don't have the unit that you thought you were going to have. Defense is getting better. Like I mentioned, you hold the Cleveland to 6 points, aided by the weather, of course. But even on Sunday against the Chargers, timely defensive plays. I thought the stop on the 2-point conversion, Tyrod Taylor, Nick Kwiatkowski's stop was enormous, no question about that. And then you force the turnover, you recover the muff punt, which is huge. You don't always recover those. This team hasn't been very opportunistic this year when it comes to forcing turnovers. You get a key turnover there. That was crucial. And then, of course, Isaiah Johnson, the hero of the game, the unlikely hero with the 2 plays in the corner of the end zone against the Chargers, breaking up jump ball, fade routes that would have won the game. So it's not. I don't think this defense is ever going to be the '85 Bears or the 2000 Baltimore Ravens or John Gruden's '02 Buccaneers defensively. Like, that's not happening, and we know that at this point, and that's okay. You don't necessarily need that to win. What you do need is a defense that is opportunistic enough to make plays here or there and to not be a total liability. In the last couple games, it has not been a complete, unmitigated liability. There has been some resistance. There has been some key plays, and that's been crucial. So with that, we'll get into a couple questions. First, Dr. D Raiders on Twitter. Why haven't we seen Raekwon McMillan on the field? They traded a draft pick for him, yet I don't see him being utilized. I know he and Littleton are vastly different types of linebacker, but with as much as Littleton has struggled, is there a possibility we see a change? Great question, Dr. D Raiders. I would say no. I don't think you're going to see a change anytime soon. We haven't seen Raekwon McMillan simply because he's a run-stuffing linebacker. We know that. And given that the holes that the Raiders have had in pass coverage this year, the struggles that the secondary's had, you want your most versatile, most well-rounded players on the field at all times. And those are obviously Nick Kwiatkowski and Corey Littleton. For all his struggles, I think Corey Littleton is settling down a little bit and resembling the kind of player he was with the Rams a little bit more the last couple games, which he's reaching double-digit tackles. He's flying around the field. He's doing a lot of the stuff we saw him do in L.A. Not all of it, but a lot of what we've seen him do in L.A. So he's improved. And as far as McMillan's concerned, let's not forget this. He's only 24 years old. Just because they made the pick, they traded for him now, doesn't mean he's not necessarily part of their future plans. Doesn't mean they're not working to develop him. He's 24. He has a lot of experience from playing in Miami, and I think it's about kind of grooming and helping him develop into the kind of linebacker that they want him to be long term, which is a little bit more versatile, a little bit better against the pass, things of that nature. He's been a key contributor on special teams this year. There's no question about that. He has logged more than 50% of the snaps on special teams in the last 3 games, and more than 40% in 4 of the first 5 games, or 3 of the first 4 games, rather. So there is a role for him there. It's not like he's not contributing at all. It's just not in the way that you thought, and that makes sense given that Nick Kwiatkowski and Corey Littleton are your high-ticket, big-ticket free agent acquisitions, and they have been playing better, especially as of late. Especially Kwiatkowski, who's been outstanding, by the way, was particularly good last week, as I mentioned. So, again, just to summarize, I don't think it's a big red flag that McMillan hasn't played. Young guy, potential to continue to develop, only 24. We may see more of him in next season or beyond. I don't think it's necessarily a failed trade or anything like that. And then another one from Dr. D. Raiders. Thank you, Dr. D. Raiders, for all the engagement today. Do you envision the Raiders locking Aguilar into a contract before the season is over? Clearly, he brings a facet to the offense that they've been looking for. I hope they can pin him down before he hits the market again. He definitely seems like a player that the Raiders would want to keep more long term, whether that's an extra year or 2 or 3, who knows, right? So I imagine that the Raiders are going to explore ways to keep him around, and it makes sense. Derek Carr, John Gruden have both been effusive in their praise for him, what he's brought to the table, his game, the dynamic he brings. He is one of the best big play receivers in football this year. I don't think there's any question about that. He's got 5 touchdown catches. That leads the Raiders, and 4 of them are on long balls, 40 yards or more, which is one of the top marks in the NFL. He's pretty established himself as one of your top guys. I mean, he's logged 78% of the snaps in the last, 6 games now? 19% the first 2, more than 78% the last 6. So he's firmly established himself as one of their top receivers, as a go-to guy for Derek Carr. And frankly, Derek Carr has had a lot of success throwing to him with a passer rating that at one point this season was at a perfect 158.3. Derek Carr's passer rating was when targeting Nelson Aguilar. Now that's calmed down a little bit now, but he is 17 of 25 on throws to Aguilar this year. Of course, the 5 touchdowns and then 347 receiving yards as well. So the 20.4 yards per reception, that leads the NFL. He is a big play threat, and there's absolutely no doubt about that. And of course, to get to your question, makes sense why the Raiders would want to keep him. Now, from a financial standpoint, I think it also would make sense for Aguilar to kind of test the market and see what's out there. He's in a situation now where he might be able to go out there and make some money and have some other suitors. Right? He only signed a 1-year deal. Little more than $1 million. I think he's proved that he's worth more than that, and it's going to be up to the Raiders to keep him. I think he's going to have suitors beyond the Raiders, and the Raiders are going to have to come with a proper offer in order to keep him around, should they want to, which I would imagine they would. I think right now that's one of the best bargains in football with what the return on the investment they're getting for Nelson Aguilar, and he knows and they know that he is going to be due for more money after that. I think he's kind of shaken off. He had a couple of drops in that Tampa Bay game, but he's shaken off, I think, that reputation for being someone who drops a lot of passes. He's been pretty shorthanded this year for the most part, and I think he's given the Raiders kind of an element or a dynamic that they don't have. Maybe that's what you thought you were getting from Henry Ruggs. We haven't necessarily seen that yet, but you are getting that right now from Nelson Aguilar with his play, with his big play ability, with the way he's able to stretch the field. So yeah, that's where we're at with Nelson Aguilar. Again, there are a couple things I'm going to be focused on and looking at over the course of the season. Health, first and foremost. What is the health situation going to look like? Can you get Damon Arnett back in the flow, back up and running, and can he be a contributor, right? And look, we saw some promise earlier in the season. And he, frankly, the secondary needs him. He's super valuable. Looks like we're getting a couple more questions here. Why is Trent Brown taking a month off? I think it's a serious kind of thing. When you have air entering your bloodstream, he's battling the complications for the coronavirus. Thank you, Anthony Provencio, for the comment or for the question. It's a serious matter, and you don't really want to rush him back in a situation like that. And of course, as we know, the Players Association is investigating what happened to Trent Brown in Cleveland. With that in mind, I think that there's going to be some caution before you get him on the field. You want to make sure he's 100% good to go. And that is, you don't want there to be any type of pushback if he comes back or anything devastating to happen to him. Got a couple other questions. Maurice Hurst, why has he played so few snaps? Injury the last couple weeks aside. I think it's just kind of about keeping. You want to rotate the defensive lineman and keep as many guys as fresh as possible. He's definitely been the most productive. I think one of the most productive and most effective defensive tackles. But you still have guys like Malik Collins that you want to get comfortable. Jonathan Hankins has been solid. I would like to see. I think it would make sense for Hurst to play more, just given that where he's grading out on Pro Football Focus and things like that, the type of impact he's able to make, stuff in the run, getting some penetration. He's somebody that's been an impact player for sure. But when he is a little banged up, you don't want to necessarily thrust him into the fold too much because you do have a little bit of depth there on the D line. Thank you, Stan 031. As far as David Irving is concerned, Anthony Provencio, thank you for the question. We have asked about Irving for the longest time, for the last couple weeks now. When is he going to play? When are we going to see him? I think it's still too soon to say. He's out of football a couple of years, and his conditioning. The messages we were getting is about his conditioning, making sure he is in shape. And that's, as far as I know, that process is still kind of working itself out. I wouldn't be surprised if we see him this week or maybe the week after, but as far as signing Irving, it's kind of a low risk, high reward type of deal where there's no need to rush him out there if he's not ready. You're 5-3. You've won the last couple games. So get him ready, see what he can do. Until then, there's kind of no rush. We got another question over here. Anthony Provencio, again, on fire. Does Incognito ever come back? Yeah, he'll come back. Could be this week, could be next week. You want to take it easy with him. He's a veteran. Achilles are tricky, feet are tricky, ankles are tricky, especially for bigger guys like that. Your offensive line with Denzel Good, with Brandon Parker, with the way those guys have been filling in, they've been solid. So there's not necessarily any kind of need to rush Incognito back. Let him get healthy and then go from there. RIP Weezy. How far do you see the Raiders going if we get everybody running back and start running on full cylinders, or all cylinders rather? That's a good question. I think playoffs is a very realistic goal and a realistic expectation at this juncture. Again, you're 5-3. You have real strengths. You have a good offensive line, a quarterback playing at an MVP caliber level, and a running game that is starting to come around. Those three are combining those three. That's often been a successful formula when you get into January. However, it kind of depends on what seed the Raiders end up with. They're going to have to go on the road, depending on what the NFL does with playoffs. If there's a bubble situation or not, might be in some wintry conditions. I think expecting the Raiders to make a playoff run would be a little ambitious, but making the playoffs this year, I think, is a very reasonable expectation, especially with everybody healthy, and would be a great benchmark for John Gruden and Mike Mayock as these guys continue this rebuild and retool this franchise and build their culture here. So that would be my expectation, is playoffs reasonable. Anything beyond that would be a little bit of a surprise, but you never know with the way those guys, with the way Derek Carr is playing, with the way the offensive line is played, and if you can get that running game going back even more. Does Arnett play this week? Good chance he plays this week. I'm not far from a certainty, but he is back out on the practice field. We know he returned to practice, and there's a chance that he is back this week. That would be big, especially we don't know about Trayvon Mullen. I think he's going to be fine. Doesn't seem like it's too serious there, but of course he went out paving the way for Isaiah Johnson to make the couple biggest plays of the game. Would be nice to see those young corners out there together, Arnett and Mullins, something we haven't seen in a long time. Anthony Provencio, is Morrow better than Littleton? I think it's hard to say. I mean, Littleton is certainly, even though he hasn't played to the level that we've seen from him last year and in previous years, he still has a track record, he still has a pedigree, and he still has the versatility and physical tools to make some plays. Morrow's contributions have been huge, no doubt, but I don't think he has necessarily the same responsibilities or the same kind of assignments, challenging assignments, the way Littleton does with his responsibilities, both in coverage, in the run, occasionally in blitzing, all those things. There's a lot being asked of Corey Littleton. He didn't necessarily respond right away, but he's been better so far this year, and I think that has to be a thing that Raiders fans should feel good about as the season continues here. Havana Cash. So are we leading the division since we are 2-0 and the Chiefs are 2-1 and their loss was to us? No. Division win-loss record that only matters with tiebreakers. The Chiefs could lose the rest of their division games, and if they still finish with a better record than the second-place team in the division, a better overall record, they are going to win the division. For example, if the Chiefs finish, 11-5, and all those losses are in the division, and the Raiders are 10-6, doesn't matter. Chiefs win the division with the better overall record. Anthony Provencio, thanks for the engagement. I really appreciate it. Another question. Do you like Cleve Farrell better at D tackle or DN? I think he's been a little bit more effective this year on the inside. He's really good against the run, and his pass rush, he's emerging a little bit as a pass rusher, even though the sack numbers don't necessarily reflect that. I think that's the interesting thing. That's what makes Cleve Farrell an interesting prospect, right, or an interesting second-year player, is that you have that versatility where he can play inside, play on the outside, and there's still a lot of room for growth. So far, I think he performs better on the inside, but we'll see. The versatility is definitely what makes him intriguing, and it's what's helped him thrive and have a better second year than his rookie season. The numbers, are we winning Super Bowl 55? You never know. Never say never. I mean, any given Sunday, I think it's unlikely. I think it's very unlikely, but again, you never know. As I said before, the numbers, making the playoffs would be a huge victory for this organization as they establish a culture with John Gruden and Mike Mayock. It would be big for Derek Carr, who had this team in the playoffs in 2016. Of course, he breaks his leg. They don't get to see how he performs in the playoff game, and the last few years have been a struggle. A lot of positive momentum with Carr this year. We know that he's in position to where he wants to secure another contract extension, and I think he's performed in a way where he has proved that if you put the requisite pieces around him, you put an offensive line in place, you give him some receivers, you give him a top 5 tight end in football, you give him a solid running game, he can make plays. He can win games. Not every quarterback has to be Patrick Mahomes, has to be Russell Wilson, has to be Aaron Rodgers in order to be effective and to win. And Derek Carr is finding a formula that works for him. I don't think he's the MVP. I want to be clear about that. But he is playing for him at an MVP level this season. Does Isaiah Johnson get more playing time? Anthony again. A little bit. I don't think he's going to become a feature corner or one of their top guys necessarily. But he proved by making plays with the game on the line that he can handle some pressure. He can handle a little bit of spotlight. He can handle those one-on-one situations. So remember, he was a project coming out of the University of Houston. They didn't expect him to be ready right away. I think they want to continue to develop him, be gradual about it, be thorough, be nuanced with his development before he gets unleashed as maybe a full-time corner or a nickel guy or somebody that's part of the rotation, consistently. But he was excellent on Sunday. There's no doubt about that. Let me see here. Thank you, Anthony. We appreciate it. As far as we appreciate the engagement. Enjoy the rest of your day at work. What's the chance you? Let's see here. I think the JG Gomez says, I think the Denver and Jets games, if we take care of business against teams we should beat, not lose to them like we did last year, we can win at least 11 and battle for the division, in my opinion. Your thoughts? I think the Chiefs is the division is the Chiefs to lose. No doubt about that. With Patrick Mahomes, with Andy Reid, when you have your Travis Kelce's, your Tyreek Hills of the world, your DeMarcus Robinsons, your Mecole Hardmans, and then you have a 1-2 in the backfield with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Le'Veon Bell, And on top of that, an opportunistic defense to boot, a Super Bowl defense, as we know, not an amazing defense, but a good enough defense to make plays and to force turnovers and to get pressure and those things of that nature. I would be surprised if the Chiefs lose this division. 11 wins isn't unrealistic per se. I think that's doable for sure. It would require beating maybe a Miami, beating an Indy, beating the Chiefs again. I mean, you can't lose all three of those games and go 11-5. So you have to win some of those games, at least one of those games, and then take care of the ones you're not supposed to win. That would be 10-6. I think is a little bit more realistic, maybe 9-7, but 11-5 certainly not out of the question. I do not think the Raiders will win the division this year. Do you think the 1-2 punch, R.I.P. Weezy, Jacobs and Booker, R.I.P. Weezy asks, rather, do you think the 1-2 punch of Jacobs and Booker is one of the best duos in the league? That's a good question. Let me say this. Booker has proved that he is a bona fide backup running back. He comes on the field, there's a change of pace, he's explosive, he's powerful, he can catch the ball, he can do a lot of the things that Josh Jacobs can, and we're seeing what he looks like when he has a role for him, built for him in this offense, as opposed to Denver, where, as we know, he did not play save for special teams this season. So I think he's been excellent. I have not been super impressed with the way Jacobs has performed this year. There's a number of things that have gone into that, right? The offensive line not being at full strength. I think he's part of scouting reports now more than he was last year. Doesn't necessarily have that breakaway speed, and I think he's been a little dinged up. As we remember in that New Orleans Saints game on Monday Night Football, got a little dinged up there late in the game. Big workload early on, and that's why I think you saw an effort this past week after Jacobs carries 31 times against Cleveland. You saw an effort to get Devontae Booker more involved. Jacobs has 14 carries. Only 14 carries on Sunday. You have a little bit more balance. You get to keep Jacobs fresh because they know they're going to need him down the stretch the rest of the year. So with that said, I don't think it's the best 1-2 punch in the league. I think, frankly, I think any one of the top guys really in their backup, like Dalvin Cook and whoever else, because Dalvin Cook is so good, I think that would be a better 1-2 punch. Same with Derrick Henry and his backup, Christian McCaffrey, Mike Davis. Although McCaffrey's hurt, we saw that that's formidable. But the Raiders, no question that the Raiders are getting what they need out of their running game these last 2 weeks. So there's nothing, there's been no issues with the way those guys have performed the last couple weeks. I think that's been huge. Ray Rivera says, Josh Jacobs doesn't impress you. I mean, he's averaging 3.8 yards per pop, maybe 3.7. Let me double check and figure that out for sure. He was great last year. He impressed me last year, but 3.7 yards per carry isn't going to impress me this season. No. And he's not catching the ball the way he wanted to. Remember, he came out and said he wanted to catch 60 balls. He's got 19 through 8 games. He's on pace for 38. I think he's very, very good. I think he proved last year he's an excellent back and can be an excellent back, but he hasn't impressed me as far as what I've been watching this season. Paul Gunther's scheme needs improvement if he stays. Yeah, I think maybe, and I also think that the personnel needs to improve. Who is the superstar on this defense? I mean, they traded Khalil Mack. You don't really have a superstar on this defense. You have a lot of good players. You have young players that have developed, that can develop. I think those guys need to continue to develop in order for Gunther's defense to be better. But Gunther deserves credit. The last couple games, I mean, he was maligned after the way the defense performed against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I thought he was rock solid the last couple games. The defense performed better, well enough to win. Certainly not anything amazing. We'll see what kind of adjustments he makes over the second half of the season. Easy Raiders does not care for the repetitive questions that people are asking. It's the same stuff that we already know. What about Trent Brown? How's Tom Cable adjusting with the new line, additions and subtractions? Sorry, Matthew Trissel. If you don't want to, if you're not too interested, then that's all right. We appreciate everybody else who's been engaged. Anthony, Easy Raiders, the numbers, JG, tetrahydrocannabinol THC. Any other questions? We're setting up. We're just about wrapping up here. We've been going for about 25 minutes. Any type of questions? Here we go. What do you think is holding Henry Ruggs back? I just think he's got to become a little bit more refined, a little bit more nuanced. He was a deep speed guy in college at Alabama. He wasn't the most productive receiver on that team, as we know. That went to Jerry Jeudy. It's just about learning how to master NFL route running. And I think the Raiders need to feature him a little bit more. When you have a guy with speed like that, you have to, I think, build him into the game plan. And they've talked about wanting to build him into the game plan more and more. It's just that the offensive formula that they have right now is effective. Ruggs had a deep shot on Sunday down the right sideline. Derek Carr drops it right in his breadbasket, and Ruggs can't quite get his feet situated. So he had a similar situation in Cleveland where he can't quite get his feet in bounds in the back corner of the end zone. It's just about polishing up and getting used to those things, getting used to the NFL and kind of becoming a more refined receiver. The speed is there. The ability is there. There's no question about that. It's just about the productivity at this point, and I think some of that's on him and some of that's on the game plan. What's the chance that you guys answer my question about Earl Thomas or Eric Reed joining the safety question, and why not ask it's a great question. Easy Raiders. Those are vet safeties that are out there. Eric Reed, as we know, one of the most productive, set records from the safety position in Carolina last year. I don't think I need to explain why he's not in the NFL. I think people who follow the league closely understand why that is. I believe he definitely deserves to be in the NFL. He's one of the best defensive players in the league last year. Say less about that. As far as Earl Thomas is concerned, we'll see. He's had issues now in his last 2 stops. Not necessarily a surprise that they haven't gone and signed him, especially with the young guys that they're trying to develop. Thank you, RIP Wheezy. I appreciate it. Thank you for being a part of the Q&A. Havana Cash record prediction. I think 10-6 or 11. I don't like making too many predictions, but I think you can expect anywhere from 9-7 to 11-5, depending on health. Of course, it's all dependent on health. Health is super important, as we know in football. If one of the key players, if Derek Carr gets hurt, I think all bets are off. But if they can remain relatively healthy and get some of the offensive linemen back, get that defense healthy, I think 10-6, 11-5 is a reasonable expectation. Unlike the other dude asking questions, why isn't Joyner playing? These are the let's see here. Why isn't Joyner playing free safety? Is there a way that y'all can ask the Raiders? Why not bring in Earl Thomas or Eric Reed? Yeah, certainly that's a question we can ask. At the press conference, we get opportunities to ask all kinds of questions, and I think it's a fair question with the struggles that the Raiders have had on the back end. So, I do think the Raiders would, as far as Ryan Hoffer's question, do you think it's time for the Raiders to move on from Harris? I expect the Raiders to move on from Harris after the season, that just given his age, given that there are always young safeties available, what you can do in the draft, options, free agency. His play he hasn't exactly played well this season. So with that, I don't think he's going to be here long term. Cesar Guerrero says the Raiders need to get Ruggs more involved. Why draft him with so much talent and use him really? I would agree. I think there are definitely creative things the Raiders can do to get him the ball. We haven't seen any of those bubble screens. There hasn't been many of those jet sweeps, those end arounds. He hasn't even really been a decoy. We have seen him get open down the field several times. They've connected on a couple of them. See the Kansas City game. They haven't connected on others. So we'll see how they use him over the course of the season. He only has 10 catches so far. His production has definitely been a little bit underwhelming. When is Incognito coming back? Norman Woodward asks. And then we only got time for a couple more guys, then we're going to get out of here. When is Incognito coming back, and should the Raiders get rid of Trent Brown next year? Incognito is working his way back from the Achilles. I think it's too soon to put a firm timeline on it. I think we could see him possibly this week or next week. You'd probably want him to get a full week of practice, given the tenuous nature of an Achilles injury, before you put him out there in a game. So we'll see if he comes back to practice this week. I think his practice availability is going to be a big indicator if he's going to play Sunday. As far as Trent Brown's concerned, they can get off his guarantees after this season. So, we'll see where that goes. They haven't exactly got the return on the investment that they wanted with him. Remember, he was the highest paid offensive tackle in the NFL, and he has not been available enough on a consistent enough basis to fulfill that kind of contract and that kind of commitment. I got a couple questions about Irving. Muse, we're going to go through rapid fire here. When will David Irving start? I think we're still a couple weeks away. It could be, it's a matter of his conditioning because he was out of the NFL for so long. Low risk, high reward move for a guy that has shown promise in a pass rush, shown promise as a pass rusher in Dallas. The numbers ask is Javen White in the Raiders' plans this season. I think he's more of kind of a developmental player too. They love him in coverage. They want him to get bigger. He's in the lower, closer to 200 pounds than he is to 250. You'd probably like to see him at 225, 230 before you're comfortable throwing him out there on a regular basis. Tanner Muse is done for the year with an injury, foot injury. He's done. What do you think about the Raiders drafting Grant Delpit? I think Grant Delpit's a fantastic player. I've had the chance to watch him a little bit in college. He flies off the screen whenever I watch him. Actually, yeah, that's right. He's a rookie this year with the Browns. So I suspected that might be the case. They took him in the second round, pick 44. So you got me with that one. Who asked that one? Got me with that one, Ryan Hofer. Sorry about that. Easy Raiders. I hear what you're saying about Javen White. Flies around the field, super athletic, super fast. The issue that the Raiders wanted to see with him, or the thing they wanted to see with him, is they wanted him to get bigger. That's what it was about. But I thought he was okay in the limited snaps he had against the New Orleans Saints in week 2, and certainly a guy that they want to develop. Last call. Any other questions, guys? Got to wrap up now. If there's anything else that I can get off rapid fire, let's go for it. If not, it was a pleasure. I appreciate all the engagement. We got a lot of questions, a lot of engagement. Always fun for me to talk Raiders with you guys. Try to answer everything to the best of my ability, and we'll go from there. Appreciate it. Take care, y'all.